Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. This morning we begin stewardship season. Everyone's favorite time of year, that time of year when we examine how God is calling us to use our resources, and yes, specifically our money, to participate in the life of the church and to build up God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And this stewardship season, as you've already heard from folks on the Budget and Stewardship Committee, it's a little different than in years past. It is not business as usual. So, if you are one of those people who gets faint and takes to the couch every time the pastor asks you to give money to the church, behold, I bring you tidings of great joy. I will not be making the stewardship ask this year. And that is in large part because one of the major goals of this stewardship season is to get my salary up to where it should have been for, well, years. And there's just something a little less than inspirational about a pastor preaching a sermon entitled 50 Reasons I Really Need a Raise. But what I can speak to you about is the transformative experience of participating in God's generosity. And so this morning I want to offer you something that our more evangelical siblings might call a testimony. A story about how God taught and transformed me the first time I ever pledged to a church. I was raised in the church, and so my family taught us kids about tithing at an early age. When I got my dollar allowance, I had to put 10% of it, so a dime, into a little, I can't believe it's not butter Tupperware that my parents had cut a coin slot in the top and put on a shelf in my bedroom. I mean, it wasn't butter. When the tub got full, we'd take the money to church, give it as part of the kids' Sunday school offering, and the whole process would begin again. That stuck with me, but while those values were instilled early, I didn't really have too much money to speak of. So in high school, college, seminary, I would occasionally toss a little bit of money in the offering plate on a whim, feel really good about myself, and call it a day. And then I got my first job. Right out of seminary, working at the Presbyterian headquarters in Louisville, Kentucky. My then spouse and I joined the church down the street from us, Crescent Hill Presbyterian Church. And when stewardship season came around, they sent us a pledge card. Now, I was fresh out of grad school, right? I was making a whopping $32,000 a year and supporting 2 people on that, so I wouldn't say we were rolling in it. But that pledge card sat on the kitchen table. And I thought about it. You know, Ginna, I thought, contrary to popular belief, you are in fact now a grown-up. You make a real salary. Maybe it's time to start giving back to a church that has given so much to you. So I looked at our budget, and I did what I think a lot of us do. I said, you've got to start somewhere. I'll give $100 a month. That's about $1,200 a year. Great. So I turned in my pledge card, and I started giving. Now, I surely was not one of the big donors in this church. My $100 a month was small potatoes. It was certainly not the biblical tithe that my parents had taught me to give growing up. If you do the math, my gift came out to slightly less than 4% of our household income. But it was not nothing. And perhaps more importantly, it was not nothing to me. I'd never given like that before on a recurring, reliable basis. And as I watched that money go out of my bank account every month through the online giving system, I felt proud to be able to actually do something, to make a small but meaningful contribution to my church family. So I gave every month for a year or two, and then one stewardship season, after we'd all turned in our pledge cards, one of our budget and stewardship elders, her name was Christy, got up during worship to offer a minute for stewardship. Christy told us that she was standing before us to make a second appeal because the pledge cards were in, but we had come up short of our budgeted goal. There were 3 things the church was trying to do that year, Christy told us. 1, give the pastor and staff an overdue raise. 2, replace the roof. Do these things sound familiar? And 3, launch a new ministry dedicated to racial justice. With the pledges we'd received so far, she said we have to choose. We couldn't do all 3. And we may have to make those hard decisions, Christy said. But I wanted to come to the congregation first and give you a chance to step up. We're not that far from our goal, she said. In fact, if all of you who give were willing to give $11 more a month, we'd have enough. $11. Well, I could do that. Actually, I could probably do more than that. I thought I could probably do another 25. So I updated my pledge card to $125 a month. And apparently so did many others, because the committee came back a week later, the next Sunday, and told us that we had met and even exceeded our goal. Now, some things had not changed. I was still small potatoes in the giving pool. And my now $125 a month was still not a tithe by any stretch of the imagination. But 2 things changed for me during that stewardship season. And they shaped my relationship to giving ever since. The first was that I learned that I could do more. When asked to, I could step up. I did not get evicted. I did not starve. I probably ate out less, but even then I still ate out. Y'all remember, I was living in Louisville. Good bourbon don't come cheap. Right? Even with my small potato salary and a family budget that felt tight, there was in fact room to grow when it came to generosity. And I would never have known that I could give more if Christy hadn't come before the congregation and asked. And the second thing I learned was that my contribution to the church mattered, even though I wasn't one of the big givers. Small potatoes, it turns out, are still potatoes. My little pledge and my little increase made possible ministry that would not have been possible if I had stayed at my original gift level, or if I had chosen not to give at all. My church was depending on me and my contribution to do God's ministry in Louisville. And y'all, that was an amazing thing to learn right at the beginning of my ministry career. That in a small church, Crescent Hill was about the same size as we are, every single gift really does matter. My gift was part of Pastor James' raise. My gift helped pay for the new roof. My gift made possible the racial justice ministry that was just getting its feet off the ground when I left Crescent Hill to move here to Taos. This experience changed me, and it transformed my own relationship to financial giving. My potatoes are a little bit bigger now, but the principle is the same. My pledge matters. And when I give to the church, I'm not just fulfilling a religious duty or earning extra Jesus points. I am giving what I have at my disposal, whatever that is, to participate in God's kingdom in a concrete, tangible way. My pledge to this church, First Presbyterian Church of Taos, feeds the hungry. My pledge houses the homeless. My pledge supports students and teachers at Enos Garcia. My pledge hosts concerts and 12-step groups every day of the week. In a world full of bad news, my pledge witnesses to the good news of Jesus Christ and God's love for all people. My pledge changes things. And your pledge does too. I hope for many things this stewardship season. That probably goes without saying. Much of my life rides on how this pledge drive goes, right? Where I live, where I work, where I raise my kid. But you know, I think that what I hope for most of all is for each of us to experience that same kind of transformative grace that I tasted years ago in that stewardship season at Crescent Hill. When I learned that unbeknownst to me, I had the $11 that God needed to build up the kingdom. And I was invited to step up and give that money back to God. May we go and do likewise.